Connor McDavid says, quote, he has every intention of winning in Edmonton, end quote. How do you process that quote?
Well, I take him at his word. I think that that's something, obviously, it's been his intention for 10 seasons in the NHL, or 11 seasons, whatever it's been. And, he's sort of saying nothing's changed. He's under contract this year with the Oilers, no matter how talks go or what he decides with his extension. But, the other thing he said today that I think was pretty notable is that it's basically, it's not his preference to have a deal done by the start of the season. It's the first time, publicly, and, we're getting a little closer to the start of the year where he's said something like that in public, and it's hard not to sort of perk up and take notice of that fact. I don't think anyone should get too carried away and use it as a predictor of how this is going to go on, because, obviously there's just a huge amount of time between today and July 1st, 2026, when Connor could potentially become an unrestricted free agent. I've got no reason to believe he's, trying to figure a way out of Edmonton, but he's obviously not in a position where, he's comfortable signing an extension with the Oilers. And this is a massive deal for him at a massive point in his career. I mean, this guy's 28, turning 29 in January, and, he's led the playoffs 3 of the last 4 years in playoff scoring. I mean, obviously he's come into the final series the last 2 years with the Oilers losing to Florida in the final. He's done almost all you can do without winning a Stanley Cup, and I think that it's of utmost importance to him that he's got a chance to not only try to win one cup, but multiple cups here as he enters kind of what I'll look at as the second phase of his career and gets closer to age 30. So, he's got a big decision in front of him. I do think, all things being equal, he'd love to remain with the Oilers, but, beyond this season, there's some question marks about what their team's going to look like, or, as with a lot of teams, they've just got, UFAs and other unknowns, and he's, at least today, to me, opened up the possibility that he's going to take more time before deciding if he signs that extension in Edmonton. It's not necessarily something we should expect to happen here in the next 2 or 3 weeks.
How big of a distraction could that be for the Edmonton Oilers this year, if that's something that, goes into the regular season? Connor McDavid playing without a contract extension, does that become a dark cloud, or has that become one of those things where he addresses it once and then everyone just kind of respects that and moves past it?
It's the great unknown for me. I mean, we know, being on our side of the microphone now, that obviously it's something, if he doesn't sign that extension, once camp opens, once the regular season opens, and we're going to discuss it. We'll be kicking around on overdrive every second day. There'll be questions naturally when he does have to do some of those media scrums and things like that. But, I don't know to what degree, if any, it would impact his teammates. I mean, it's a hard one for me to kind of evaluate. I think it's probably on some level difficult for Connor to evaluate. And it was, something else he mentioned today. So we don't need any more distractions. He wants to make sure the team, as they look to get over the hump and, win one more playoff round than they've been able to the last 2 years, that he's not doing anything to take away from that with potentially having this as an unknown. So, I would say it would be sort of a brave new world if we got into that. There's been other great players, including Mitch Marner last season, obviously went all the way to free agency and ended up in Vegas. But, there's only one Connor McDavid. There's only one player of his stature in the league right now. And, I think that brings with it some, there's going to be naturally some attention there. But I don't know if it's going to, if it would become something that bothers the Oilers day in and day out or not. And so, I think that's why this will be an incremental day-by-day kind of story if we get into September or October and he hasn't actually signed that deal. If he truly does still need more time, we won't have any equivalent to this, really. I don't think that you haven't had a generational player in anywhere in recent memory potentially even think about free agency. As I mentioned, I don't want to go too far down that road because I think there's a lot still to play out here, but it becomes more and more possible, I suppose, the longer we go without him signing another contract.